Hello, everyone, and welcome to this session on leveraging social media as a medical student. This is a really special uh, video because we have three amazing, stellar radiology applicants and medical students who have organized the RAD Room, and they're leaders of the RAD Room. We have Arun and Sahil from NeoMed, and we have Ashley from ATSU. They're here, and they're here to ask me questions about social media, and I'm just here to answer their questions, and I'm just going to let them take it from here. So Team Rad Room, go ahead and take it away.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Awan, for hosting us and organizing this. We think it's going to be really helpful for a lot of medical students. So our first question is, do you think Twitter is a useful tool for medical students?
Absolutely. And before I answer that, I just want to say, I think the work that you guys are doing in the Rad Room is just so helpful and so beneficial to medical students out there who are interested in radiology. I think, it's really going to make a major difference in terms of giving them the resources that they need to succeed. So kudos to you guys, and thank you for all the work that you guys have been doing. But to answer your question, yes, I think Twitter is huge for residents and for medical students and for those who are aspiring to go into any specialty, whether it's radiology, gen surge, anesthesia, dermatology, because it increases your visibility. And I think that that is key, especially in this era in the virtual environment where so many people are applying to residency programs. When you have a name and you have a Twitter handle and you're posting things, you're going to eventually catch the attention of some educators out there, like program directors, vice chairs of education, assistant PDs. And the more, active you are, the more you're able to tag people, the more you're able to post meaningful things, aka like what you guys are doing in the Rad Room. It's going to get noticed, and it's going to get noticed by people. So it's just another way to sort of augment your application in some way and to show your visibility to other people who may not know you. And they're like, so I mean, 20 years ago, this was unheard of, right? Like we didn't know anyone. Like when I was applying, I applied in 2007, 2008. I didn't know anyone on the interview trail. I didn't know any of the people that were interviewing me, but now it's different. Like when I'm interviewing applicants, I may recognize some of them from Twitter, from LinkedIn, or Instagram or something like that. So I think the whole atmosphere and the landscape has changed because of social media.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, I think the three of us can each attest that we all had personal Twitter accounts before, but then when we actually got into the med Twitter game and started networking with faculty, it was amazing to see, what opportunities were out there. So that leads me to my next question. For medical students who've never been a part of Twitter, what advice would you give them in terms of crafting their profile? Things like choosing a picture or how to describe themselves in their bio, things like that.
I think that's a great question. So I think, first of all, get on Twitter. I think it's important to get on it. Have a professional photo. You don't want to, you're using it for a reason. I think most medical students are using it so that they can be seen and so that it can help them in their quest or their journey to reach their end goal, which is to get a great residency in whatever field that they want to go into. So I think presenting yourself in the most professional way possible, with a nice photo that, highlights, who you are, maybe have, you know, pretty much the same way you would pose for, a LinkedIn photo or like, any professional, background or atmosphere. The other thing is that you want to introduce yourself by saying, aspiring rad res or aspiring gen surge resident, hashtag that with, ERAS or match 2023 if you're applying for this cycle, so that people know that, you're the real deal for this year, right? I mean, I've looked at people's profiles seriously. Like, I mean, I've looked at all three of yours, just FYI, in case you guys didn't know. I've never met you guys. I've seen, what you guys have written about yourselves. I mean, this is a reality, and this people do this, So, and then it gives us some insight into, okay, well, this person is applying this year. This person is interested in this. Even for my University of Maryland School of Medicine students that follow me, like I look to see, oh, this person is going into anesthesia, or this person is going into radiology. I should connect with them, So, having that information in your bio, like aspiring rad res, aspiring general anesthesia resident, hashtag it with, the important, match 2023, and just giving, a brief bio of, who you are and, what your interests are. I think, even though it's 3 or 4 lines, can go a long way in kind of presenting yourself to the world, essentially, because what you're doing that's exactly what you're doing. You're really presenting yourself to the world, to the medical ED community. And you should do it in a very clear and concise way so that people know, what your ambitions are and what you're all about.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, like you mentioned, it's just a few lines, but it's incredible, how long those details can help propel you, future in terms of connecting with people and just getting yourself out there.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think it's, in this era of social media, it's so important and it will do wonders for you, I promise. And I'm sure we'll talk about that, later on in this session, but I think it just has such a big impact.
Great. So in that vein, Dr. Awan, we'd like to ask you, so, one of the first things is you touched on the building of a effective Twitter profile. The next thing that comes up, which I feel like a lot of people struggle with, I did it first personally, is figuring out who to follow. It's like a wide stratosphere of people on there. And how would you go about recommending a student to choose who to follow?
Yeah, I think you should follow Awan Rad. I'm totally kidding. No, you should follow who you want to follow. I mean, it's just simple as that. There's no rules, right? There's no rules and regulations. You should follow who you feel synergy with. You should follow the people that you think you're going to benefit from, right? So that means other people. If you're interested in radiology, maybe some other people that are applying into radiology. You should follow some, maybe thought leaders, whoever you think is a thought leader in radiology, who is having an impact in radiology. Follow those people. And you'll see that it'll become very obvious, when you start seeing Twitter feeds and you see the people that are posting on certain things about the match. It'll be very obvious who you want to follow. You should follow. It should be broad though. You should follow a broad people. That should be PDs from different institutions, assistant PDs, associate PDs, vice chairs of education, other aspiring radiology residents, gen anesthesia residents, whatever it is you may be, your friends. I mean, I'm not here to tell you who you should follow, but honestly, you should just follow the people who you jive with. I follow people, obviously radiology people, but also people that I just like, because of the things that they stand for. So, but I think for the purposes of the match, you should definitely follow, those people who are thought leaders in that specific field and who are contributing good content. People should follow the Rad Room if they're interested in radiology. You know what I mean? It's as simple as that, because you guys are posting great content out there. Inside the Match is another great, vehicle that, really, posts a lot of meaningful things for radiology. And I hope that people follow me because my platform is all about MedED and supporting you guys and doing the things, not just for radiology, but, even for any, the advice that I give is really general for all specialties. So, at the end of the day, it's up to you, and just follow those that you feel resonate with your message and what your inner core is all about.
Great. No, that makes sense. Yeah, it took me a couple months, I feel personally, to like get a Twitter feed that was curated to like my interests, even within radiology. And so I feel like over time, depending on who you follow, who you like, the whole Twitter algorithm, I think it eventually shapes to like, figuring out what you like. And definitely would echo that. Your supplemental app video and all the content you create super general. So radiology or not, I endorse that follow for Awan, Ed. The next question we have is, so the first tweet is always a challenge, right? So I think you alluded to those hashtags, things of that nature. How do you recommend a student to introduce themselves on Twitter, whether that be their first post or just go about that process?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think honestly, it's just about being honest and being genuine with who you are. So, saying, my name is so and so. I'm a future aspiring rad res. Really excited to meet new people, meet new mentors, and look forward to joining the hashtag rad res community, hashtag EROS, at Inside the Match, at Awan Rad, at whoever, Yasha Gupta MD, at the Rad Room, whatever these, influencers are that will help propel and augment your application. The key really is just to be humble and just to be genuine, and just, you're going out there trying to, put yourself out there so that you can connect and meet people, right? So, and that's exactly what I just said, right? You want to say that because that's really what you're trying to do. And then it's always important to tag people that can amplify you, right? So, if someone has a lot, like Inside the Match, for example, has a great following, right? So you may want to tag them. You may want to tag others that have a great following, you know what I mean? So then they may like it, and then, or they may even retweet it if you're lucky, So, these things help you. And I really try to retweet, if people tag me and they're new, I'll like automatically retweet you. You know what I mean? Like I just think that it's my duty to do so, just to get them out there. I think a lot of people feel similarly, where we're all trying to help. This is what we're all about. I'm just trying to help you guys match into the greatest residency you possibly can, do things that no one did for me, when I was applying, quite frankly. So like that's kind of my motto, and how I do things. And I think others feel the exact same way, right? So people are very generous on social media. People are very helpful, you'll find, on social media. And, I think if you use it in the right way, it's only going to be positive, and it's only going to allow you to kind of succeed in the future.
Awesome. No, thanks, Dr. Awan. And on that, just one last follow-up question on there is, are there any differences for like going about engaging fellow students versus, faculty and residents, or any tips and tricks you have? Because obviously sometimes that level of communication between the different parties has to be different. On social media, you want to be very careful with how you interact. What are your tips and tricks for that?
I think you do need to be careful, especially if you don't know people, like, meaning like you haven't met them personally, right? Like, if you only know them through social media, you want to be a little careful, because they may not know exactly who you are. So, you want to be careful in the way you interact with people, especially if you're interacting with like a PD who's going to review your application. It's of course okay to like tag them, I mean, no one is gonna, you know, daunt you for tagging someone. I think it's great if you do that, but don't expect someone to like it or retweet it. But if they do, that's a gift, right? So I think it's totally okay to tag them. I think it's totally okay to like their tweets. In fact, I think that's helpful, especially if you feel synergy with some of the things that he or she is saying. Like it, retweet it, and then find ways to augment their posts, support them, and maybe even share some of their posts, especially if you feel that it's very useful, because that'll catch their eye. Like, oh wow, this applicant is sharing my post. You know what I mean? I think it's flattering to some extent. You know what I mean? Like when you guys share my post, I mean, I'm flattered that you guys feel that way, about me. So I mean, and I remember that. I know who you are, even though I haven't met the three of you. I know exactly who the three of you are, right? So I think it's helpful when it comes to other residents or other med students. Just be friendly, just the way you are in person, right? Be supportive. Be supportive in the way you interact with them. Like their posts, especially if it's something that you like. If they published a manuscript, if there's a resident or a med student that's published it, like it and congratulate them. And just be authentic about it. If you do those things, I think you'll be well liked. It'll be well received. They will start to like your posts as well. It's kind of like a subconscious thing. Like, you start liking some people, they kind of morally feel obligated to like your things too. So it's a domino effect of goodness and happiness, I think, when you do that type of stuff. So I think those are the etiquettes that I would follow, when interacting with residents and PDs, especially those that you may not know in person.
No, great. Yeah, definitely echo that positive feedback. Like, what does feel like that, where you like people's posts and stuff, and then you see a like from them, and it's just kind of like keep building that up. And absolutely. And then one last thing is, like, in terms of I like identifying residents or faculty, how do you go about necessarily finding a mentor, leveraging social media, particularly Twitter, to go about doing that specifically? Because I know that can be a little tricky, I guess, via the platform.
I think it can be tough. I've definitely mentored people on social media, for sure. Like, there were several that I've mentored on, through Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram. I think it just comes with finding the courage to DM the person, at some point. You obviously you don't want to blind DM someone. Like, if you've never, interacted with them, you've never liked their tweets, you've never retweeted them, and you just like DM them, it may not be as powerful. But if you've been kind of following someone for a long time, let's say someone's been following me for a while, they've liked a lot of my posts, they've retweeted some of my posts, and I see that they're interested, and then they eventually DM me a little later saying, hey, like, I would love to hear your advice on so and so, or I would love to pick your brain on something. Then of course I'd be happy to do that. And I think a lot of people would be totally happy and fine. But I think it just comes with finding the courage to just go out and DM people. Like, I've had beautiful mentorship experiences with some people, many of which who, there was one person, who I mentored, he reached out to me on Twitter. I had never met him before. I started helping him. I ended up meeting him at RSNA. I started vouching for him and, sent emails to PDs about some of the great things that he was doing. And then, it came to a point where this person actually asked me to reach out to a PD that he was applying to. And then I reached out, and then he had actually already gotten a rejection letter from that program. And then like a month later, they had like an opening for an interview. They were like, oh, okay, well, maybe we'll just interview that person. So they actually interviewed that person. And then I talked to that PD again. He actually ended up matching at that program for radiology residency. And this person went unmatched for the last 2 or 3 years. So, strange things can happen. You know what I mean? So I mean, a mentorship can go a long way, and I share that story just to give hope to a lot of people that this process is tough, but it can be rewarding. And reach out to people, especially if you feel some synergy or resonance with people. Reach out to them, see if they can help you. Not everyone will help you, but I try my best to help as many people as I possibly can. But frankly, I'm being overwhelmed with how many people have asked me this year. But I've tried to do my best to help everyone I possibly can. The sky's the limit, and just be open to getting and receiving feedback.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Awan.
I think you shared some really great tips, especially like navigating, getting started in the space of Twitter. I think is really challenging for students. So these tips are like really navigating the nitty gritty, which I think will help students that are struggling, like where to begin. So thank you so far. You talk a lot about like authenticity, being genuine with yourself and like putting your best foot forward. How do you think students can become more noticeable within Twitter, like build a brand or stick out from the crowd?
Yeah, I think the way to do that, Ashley, that's a great question, is to uplift others. Start by uplifting others and start by, liking other people's posts. If there's something like, let's say Sahil published an article, in academic radiology, tweet that and say, so proud of my, co-founder of Rad Room, for publishing this article on this, and then, people realize, oh, wow, okay, Ashley is really, she's here, to promote other people too. You know what I mean? So, that's real, and that's awesome, and I think people catch on to that, they catch on to that positivity. So that's one way I think where you can stand out. And then, just tweeting your own content, whatever, and just, and being humble about it. It's being, very thankful, let's say you publish an article in academic radiology and like say, very thankful to my mentor, Dr. So-and-so for helping me, navigate this and publishing this paper, right? And then, of course, that person is going to retweet it and say, great job, Ashley. The work was all yours. And kind of promote you in the process. But by you showing humility initially, you will get noticed as someone that really worked hard and was humble about it and is promoting others. So just being active, tweeting your content, liking other people's posts, retweeting other people's good content, and just keep connecting with others, right? The more you start to connect, the more you'll build your brand, and the more you're going to be noticed, and the more you'll become visible.
I think that I felt so much. I think I talked to like everyone I talked to about radiology is like how welcoming the community is. And I see that not only in radiology on Twitter, but with like the Gen Search community, Gyn Gang, OB-GYN, and everyone. I think that Twitter really shows you how connected you can become. And as a medical student, I feel like that really anchors you into something, really like makes you feel like a part of something. So I don't think that can be underestimated for a student. You kind of already touched on this, but do you recognize applicants from their social media? And do you think that as a PD, that can affect like either positively or negatively their chances of getting an interview or that type of thing for residency?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question. I think subconsciously it does, and people may not agree with me. So I want to start by saying that there are some people in the camp that think that, okay, it's not going to really have an effect. It's all just based on your EROS application, your board scores, your grades in medical school, your letters of recommendation, the activities you've done, your personal statement, et cetera, right? But the reality is, if I've interacted, let's say with you three, right? And, I've seen the work that you've done, you've written a paper with me, and I see your application, isn't it human nature that I'm going to likely, have some positive sentiments when I'm reviewing your application? I mean? I think this is a really profound and interesting topic that someone should do research on. Like I don't know how to design the study, because I think the design would be really tough to to figure this out and to really isolate this variable. But like for someone that interacts with someone on social media, like how likely is it that that person will get an interview, or that person will get an invite to do an away rotation at that place, which will further increase their chance at matching at that institution? You know what I mean? I think like that's a tough question, but I personally am in the camp that heck yeah, it's gonna influence you, and I think positively, right? Like I think subconsciously we will be drawn to that person because we've seen their platform, we know we've liked the things that they've seen, and they've been interacting with us positively, right? Like wouldn't I want to interview someone or accept someone into my residency who I've seen and interacted with versus someone who I have never seen before and I've only interacted with them for 15 minutes on virtual interview on Zoom, right? I mean, these are questions that you should ask yourself, right? And that PD should ask themselves. And I think, the answer to this is yes. I mean, obviously, if you interacted with someone in a way, even on social media, even if it be on social media, I think that will subconsciously have a positive effect. And I understand that people may disagree with me, but this is how I feel.
I totally agree. I think too that it gives you like this unique opportunity to build these relationships years in advance. I see that sometimes there's like first year medical students joining Twitter, and I'm so amazed because they have this opportunity to really build these important relationships with, their peers, with colleagues, programs. I think it's such an awesome opportunity. Speaking of, we've talked a lot about the great things about Twitter today. Do you have any cautionary advice you would give students before getting involved with social media?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think social media is, for the most part, good and beneficial, no question about it, right? But you obviously have to be somewhat cautious when you use it, right? You want to only be positive, right? You don't want to be detrimental in your platform. You don't want to be putting anyone down. I think as a student, a medical student, you should be very cautious, especially if you like disagree with someone, either just don't say anything or do it in a very diplomatic way, you know what I mean, where you're not offending anyone. Of course, if you're presenting images, they need to be HIPAA compliant. You definitely don't want to be sharing patient information, on social media. That's a HIPAA violation. So there have been horror stories about, these things that have been done. So you definitely don't want to be in that camp, because that can really, damage your image, on social media. You definitely don't want to do that. Your social media should be a way to augment and amplify your image, right? It should be the exact opposite of that. And you don't want to do the other extreme where you're tarnishing your image. So, just be very careful in the way you interact with people. Always be supportive, always be helpful, always be positive. I think if you follow those basic principles, I think, it can really do wonders for you.
That's awesome. I really don't think we can thank you enough. I think we've provided us so much guidance today and also previous to this. So yeah, definitely thank you for answering all of our questions tonight.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much for hosting this this important session. And thank you to the radiology community and to the MedED community. Please subscribe to this channel, MedED page. Please support our mission of supporting free knowledge worldwide. And we'll see you next time on another interesting episode. Thank you.